are on today's call. So really, to Paul's earlier point, I mean, I love this thought process around empowerment and education. It's really such a core tenet to what we believe here in Case Status, all about that client education, but also empowering them to make sure that they have the know into what's going on with their case, to give them the peace of mind, with everything going on today and just in life in general, have that peace of mind knowing that they have this single source of truth that very much is the expectation from the client point of view. Whether they're tracking a package or looking at their banking statement, why not give them clear, concise access into their legal matter? And so just really glad, Paul, that you touched on that, because I think it ties in really well with what we're going to show today. Really just want to make sure you guys have a good understanding of a high level through the integration between Case Status and MerusCase. More than happy to schedule something kind of offline to go through something more specific for each individual. So feel free to reach out after. Would be more than happy to get a more detailed view. But just to give you guys a good idea of what we're looking at here, we're really going to dissect it into two segments: the client experience and staff experience. The same way that we want to empower clients, we want to make sure that we empower staff to create efficiencies, to streamline processes, and really utilize MerusCase as that single source of truth, but to also use Case Status as the complementary factor, right? The front office that is Case Status complementing the back office that is MerusCase. And so we're going to talk about that today. On the left side of the screen, we're really focusing on the client experience, what it's going to look like for the client as they use Case Status, mainly through our mobile application. We can accommodate texting, email notifications, web browser, and computer desktop apps as well. But where we find most of our clients using is the actual mobile app, around a 70-80% adoption rate. And part of that, again, is that expectation. Your clients are getting it in every other industry. Why not have that same experience when it comes to their legal case? And so a very high adoption, and part of it is just the simplicity of actually getting into their case. A client gets access to Case Status, and then all they need to do is enter in their cell phone number, a verification code, and that is it. So no email, no password, no extra credentials. We make it very easy for the client to log in, but we take the security very seriously. HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We love touting that because not a lot of folks are going through that process. And so it's very tedious of a process to go through, right? And so we really made sure that we put that at the forefront because we take that very serious, especially as there's a lot of education going on internally and externally as well. When a client logs in, you can see that they have the answer to their number one question. What is going on? What's my status? The empowerment may have been lacking at a certain point because when they didn't know what was going on, the go-to was to call the law firm, was to send an email, was to send a text message, right? And have all this multi-channel communication as to what's going on, just for that simple question of what is happening. We now want to make sure that we have that centralization from the client and education so that they have everything in a one-stop shop, right? As the client, I'm on a workers' comp case. I have a checklist item on here. My current status is claim review. And now I have this access and ownership as the client to be able to see what exactly is happening in this stage of the case, to get this visual representation of where I'm at in my journey. I'm on stage 1 out of the 6. I have a nice overview as to what's going on, but also making sure that I'm going to have access to this journey from start to finish. So the firm gets to ultimately create the journey, as little as 2 stages, as many as 12, for the client to always rely back on to see, hey, I'm on claim review, but if I wanted to look ahead, I can see 2 is treatment, 3 is finished treatment, 4 is attorney review, 5 negotiation, 6 settlement, and then case closed. So that's the empowerment that we really dive into here, is the self-service for a client, to be able to answer their own questions at any time throughout the day, to be able to log in, get that peace of mind, and log back out. We give firms the opportunity to customize their journeys, to embed videos, add links, but ultimately answer that giant question of, hey, what's happening? Or really any other question that law firms are typically getting. Decreasing the amount of inbound traffic that's coming in by over 45%. So huge in what we've seen as far as the value that Case Status brings to the table. We want to map these as updates are happening in MerusCase. So as you're making changes to MerusCase, it's going to automatically notify the client that a case has been updated in Case Status, so that from a staff perspective, nothing is really changing. It's complementing what the current process looks like when it comes to client updates. A client is also going to have one single source for communication, so that we're eliminating the multi-channel, eliminating the mix of the phone calls, the emails, the texting, and giving them one place to see every single message, update, and document. If they don't download the app, they're still getting it via text. They can log in via web browser, mobile browser, but all they're doing is just hitting send a message. They can type their message out. So I can say, what's going on with my case. I can upload a document. I can upload a file. One thing that I'm actually very excited for, Paul, is we have scanning coming fairly soon. So you're going to be able to add a scan feature on here as well to scan some documents. But then I could easily send my message to the law firm, where that message is going to automatically redirect back into MerusCase. So again, MerusCase remaining the single source, empowering the staff to never have to leave, for the most part, their MerusCase environment, having all of our messages automatically sync back into the activity tab directly under the messages. Letting you know that it's a case status message, giving you that nice overview. You can see that the message is already synced. We have messages syncing back every 2 minutes, and then documents syncing back every 20 minutes. So again, this is where everything lands for the firm. This is where everything ends, the day-to-day, where your staff members primarily live, case status becoming the main driver when it comes to communication. Now, from a staff perspective, we want to make it just as easy to be able to communicate back, get some extra horsepower when it comes to the communication, but also live in that central state of mind, right? So that we can eliminate the multi-channel for them. So we have a browser extension that you can see up here for the staff to take advantage of, where you can see it's the case status logo. It's going to automatically recognize the case that you are in and give you the full power of case status without ever having to leave the case in MerusCase. One single pane of glass to give you the goodness, the extra goodness of that client and how they're engaging. We can track client activity, the messages, the documents, as well as the checklist items. So now, as a law firm, you're empowered to get an audit trail from the client to see every single time the client logs into the app, viewed a message, read an automated message, pressed a specific button, sent something out, have that nice tool and measurement of engagement from the client, so that okay, this person needs an extra touch point, this person maybe doesn't, maybe I can create some automations to work in the background. All of the messages come into one location, so that it all lives here, but it also syncs back into MerusCase as well. So streamlining the communication effort for a client or for a staff member to easily hit send a message and send their message out. We have translation capabilities to be able to cater to demographics that firms may have not been catering to before. So, from the client point of view, a client is going to be able to translate the application to over 138 languages. Talk about empowerment there, Paul, right? And just education alone, meeting them where they expect to be met if English isn't their native language.
Yeah, a quick question came in on that, Jose, is the client configuring their language, or is the staff at the law firm configuring their language? Where does that actually take place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the client, the first time they log in and at any point throughout the case, they're going to be able to set the language that they would like to translate the application. So you can see I have it set to Vietnamese, for an example, just quickly, and I have this globe icon where I can just translate my checklist items in that desired language. I can look at my current status and translate that as well. The beauty behind it, to answer the question, is that when a client selects that language, it'll let the staff know of what that language actually looks like. So it gives the staff the default view to translate that message, but just know they could always change it. So that from a staff member perspective, now they're empowered to be able to communicate in that non-English language as well. So every message that comes in will be able to have this translate button so that every staff member can communicate in that non-English and serve that underserved community, right? And really be able to drive adoption in the experience tenfold. And so really streamlining communication efforts that way from a communication standpoint. We want to leverage AI to help streamline communication as well. And so we have our recommended response tool, which I'm very excited for, especially with the things that we have coming through our AI tools. And that's our recommended response, which is available now. So, we're developing this language model for law firms that isn't shared with other law firms. It isn't, out in the public, but it's using the law firm's website, the content of pages, the FAQs, the blog post, and that language model is developing a firm tone and voice. every time a client sends in a message, there will be 3 recommended responses for the law firm to then select which message they'd like to respond with. They can change regenerate, they can expand, they can shorten, they can upvote, they can downvote. So like anything AI gets better the more that the firm uses it. The beauty is that that language model starts learning members communicate as well. So it becomes a great tool to streamline messaging from a training perspective. We've seen training cut in half because new staff members now have a leg up on communication because they're using that language model around the firm, and then it's learning as that new user gets better with time. So empowering communication.
Yeah, and Jose, I'll just jump in because I think you had some technical, because it sounded like it moved from one microphone to another, and I see your iPhone is working on mirroring. So we lost your audio for a second, but I think it continued through. Everything sound on your end?
Yes, I believe. All right, perfect. We're back.
Yeah, your mic sounds back to primary mic, so good stuff.
Oh, I think it switched to my phone for some reason, but hopefully that all came out. But
yeah, no, it did. Yeah.
So yeah, streamlining communication I think is key. We've seen tons of value from the AI tool. It's a fairly new feature, but an over 40% of messages coming back through the recommended responses getting unedited. So, very powerful, right? This idea that we can now cut the back and forth and the formulating of message in half, especially when it comes to new staff. One thing I was excited to show as well, Paul, and you may not know this, is the AI summary tool is actually in beta right now. I actually kind of put it on this account so that folks can see it. But to be able to summarize messaging, I think, is just as important. There's been huge strides with AI when it comes to doing an overview on the actual case in itself. But again, from the client experience, we want to summarize the actual messaging, what the overview looks like, to be able to measure what blockers and client sentiment looks like as well, and then even follow-up items and open questions. It's really leveraging the AI to, again, learn as staff members use it, but to give you that primary focus from a client perspective, which I think is second to none, right, when it comes to case status versus the traditional means.
Well, and I'm going to tee up some of the stuff we're going to hear when Sergio talks about the practitioner. So cool feature, Jose, but where does the rubber meet the road? The really cool area where the rubber meets the road is response time and the amount of time that staff have to spend managing, right? We can't get rid of all communications, and you don't want to. You have the client have access and empowerment and education to the stuff that is repetitive, but there are going to be questions and you want to have the time to respond to those. So one of the things we measure by de facto, we call it, just like the AI, it's all about client intelligence, knowing what's going on in that relationship. We're constantly measuring response time between your staff and the client. That not only reduces just coming to the case status platform, by virtue of the fact that we've consolidated all communication channels into MerusCase or into your CMS. But secondarily, when you apply the lift of being the editor versus the author of a response, that time comes down even further, and we measure both of those data points. So when you listen to Sergio, listen to that piece of being able to respond. It also comes back to AI summary, Jose, I believe, which is, think about it. You may have somebody that's out on PTO, out of office, sick. Somebody else has to step in, and that's the person that has to reply on that day or that given. So to keep the law firm's service level agreement of responsiveness, somebody else has to come in, case summary. Now I know everything that's going on in the case. And by the way, if that's in another language, it's all in English there. So if I'm not bilingual, I still get the summary in the language that I prefer. That makes my response even that much faster. So we are all about not doing the legal work, but taking those heavy lifts off of staff so that you can delight your staff, delight your client at the same time, get that scalable. So really cool, Jose, and don't want to steal Sergio's thunder, but it really is cool where that comes back to pay an ROI to the firm.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about empowerment education. We we want to also build upon this theme of centralization. As we're giving client this one single source, let's give staff members the same opportunity to have this extra horsepower really without ever having to leave the MerusCase environment, to be able to create multiple checklist items for clients where a client can see what needs to happen, to build some accountability on tasks that need to get taken care of, but to also maybe take it a step further and place a client's case on hold. Hey, need documents or need docs. Pardon the spelling errors here, but, making it very easy to place a case on hold for the client, notify the client that their case is placed on hold so that when they log in, they're going to get notified. It's going to turn the application bright red, and it's going to stay that way every single day until you as the firm remove the hold yourself. And so building this sense of urgency, as this becomes the single source for the client, we now see to that point of messages, response times going down. Now time on desk potentially can get down, right? Because we're now building upon this idea of a client urgency there, need of things that need to get taken care of.
Jose, I don't want to break your flow, but I have another question in the queue that I'll pose to you. So I think it's tied to this idea of empowerment and education that we were talking about in the beginning. Embedded videos, what a great way to educate. I know a lot of firms are using it publicly. Maybe it's to drive SEO and just brand reputation. But can you show an example? Specifically, I think Michael wants to see if you can show an example of that.
Yeah. So, within the back end of case status, you're always going to have access to create custom journeys and automations behind the actual journeys in itself. The goal behind that is, as we're showing what that journey looks like, dependent on the practice area. I know the workers' comp is the big, but if it's PI, if it's anything else, the idea is to be able to create that journey and have the embedded video live within the actual journey in itself. So it becomes a great tool to provide a little bit more of a digestible talk track around what's going on in the case for the client to then get access to, but then using that with our automations as well, to have an embedded video every time a message gets sent out. When it moves to certain stages, the automation has become very robust in a sense that, as clients go through their journey, we want to make sure we hit them with the desired outcomes of the specific information that they need as they hit certain milestones in their case.
So in this case, you're looking at the far right process, which is the full journey. And there's a video there that I could play ad hoc. On the left side where it shows me my current status, if there was an embedded video there, I would be able to play it from that side as well.
You can, yes. And I may not have it ready for this example, but yes, if you hit more, the video essentially pops up right there at the bottom so that you can see the embedded video on the main page so that right when you log in, you don't have to move around. It's there ready to go.
All right. Well, Michael, I'll speak for him. I think his suggestion is put a video in stage 1 of all your demos, but we'll move on. Another segue, which may have been where you're going, because I teased it out in the slide about the most important stage. So William's asking about, if we know that a client is seeing a doctor on a particular date, is there a way to schedule a message to remind them, or for the day after the visit, to remind them to send the medical report from the doctor handed them the visit? I know that's an awesome use case and maybe a tee up to your next set.
It really was. I promise this was
William. Thank you.
This was right where I was going, so I really appreciate it. So yes, the idea again, around the education and empowerment is for a client to self-serve, not only when it comes to updates, but actually log treatment and log in appointments, right? We know that can make or break a case. We know that that is very important for law firms to track. And so, not only do we want to empower firms to create automations around that. So for example, have an automated message specifically for a treatment reminder that says, hey, did you get treatment? Did you miss your appointment? Did you switch providers? And having that live in a specific case or a specific stage of a case. But we also want to empower the client to add the appointments in themselves. So a client is going to be able to add any medical appointment on here, where it's very simple. It's going to ask for some basic provider information to where once they create that appointment, they're going to get 3 automatic messages. The day the appointment is created, the day before the appointment, the day of the appointment. But then 4 hours after the appointment, it's going to automatically ask them how the appointment went. So it'll pop up with the provider information. They'll be able to add a description on here, how they're feeling, kind of like a doctor, right? Bad, good, great, okay. Any sort of treatment notes that they have on here. And then once they finish doing that, once they finish housing that journal of treatment, it's going to automatically ask them, all right, let's schedule your next one. It'll automatically ask, is it the same provider? Is it a different provider? A lot of our workers' comp firms will typically create the first appointment and then let the client know that they have to schedule the rest. The idea here, though, is that becomes an internal reminder system for the client where law firms could set that expectation from day one, have it laid out clear in their journey that in order for the best possible outcome, client needs to go in and add appointments and get those automatic reminders. It not only benefits the client to have that reminder and to be able to house that journal, but for the law firm as well to be able to have at any point throughout the case. It gives clients something to do during the lull periods. And now there's that partnership approach, right? That's just as important. It's no longer, hey, firm, here's my case, get to work. It's, well, if I want the best possible outcome just as much as my law firm does, and if it's very clear in the process or journey or video, for that example, that the next step is to log in treatment, then that becomes a part of the process, right? But to build upon that theme, client never has to leave the app to take advantage of a lot of that horsepower. And so really utilizing this tool to help build the strongest case possible.
Awesome.
Last thing I'll touch on from an appointments perspective is we want to make sure that is also complementing MerusCase. You create an appointment in MerusCase, it's going to automatically create the appointment for the client in case status as well. So really eliminating the double entry, trying to eliminate as much friction as possible for the staff so that it just becomes a part of the everyday process. So that's all I had prepared for today. We can, again, talk about a number of other things like our automation and our treatment tracking and net promoter score tracking. But really the goal was to show what it will look like for the client as the case progresses, but also making sure that staff members have everything central to one location as well. Paul, you can check me here for any questions.
Let me do one more thing because I think it'll resonate with the bigger picture of where we can take a firm in the what I like to call the hierarchy of outcomes. Obviously, cutting down on email, phone calls that are inundating with the same question is sort of step one, outcome one. When you consolidate everything in a MerusCase, you get out of texting, emailing, phone calls as separate, and you organize it into this one flow. With all of that said, measuring client satisfaction, I think, is a huge part of what we are about, what our mission is, and what Sergio, as a practitioner in workers' compensation, was saying is very important for his firm and something that he wanted to measure right away. So maybe show that idea of automating that capture, taking what is typically qualitative and typically steered away from by law firms and making it automated, quantitative, and that we can build playbooks against the idea of what they give. So a little bit of tee up. Didn't come through the questions, but I know that Sergio is going to talk about it, so I think it's worth touching on here.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, especially from an education perspective internally, right? We want to be able to have make data-driven decisions as a law firm and to be able to track trends on how a client is feeling throughout the entirety of the case. And to your point, Paul, we're really taking strides in AI and summarizing the case and tracking client sentiment. We want to be able to measure that. So it looks like it switched me to my...
Yeah, it switched again. We lose you for about 3 seconds, and then we get you back, and it's clearly a backup microphone. So
I think it. All right, took me back. So at every stage change in the case status, every time we move from one stage to the next, your client is going to be required to rate their experience from a 0 to 10 net promoter score. And so very easy, as you can see here, very simple to understand how likely you are to refer the firm to a friend or colleague. We keep it as true to net promoter score standards as possible, but very easy for the client to enter in a score. They're also going to have the option to leave any sort of feedback, and then they're back on their case, right? Very easy, very simple, very straightforward and painless. Law firms can now use this, kind of going back to our automations, to leverage that data and look for more opportunities. We can create very simple but powerful rule sets here through our automations. Like every client that leaves me a 9 or a 10 in specific stages of the case can automatically get a thank you message. Oh, by the way, here's my Google Business, my Avo, my Super Lawyer link. On the flip side, we can say, well, every client that gives me a 6 or below in every stage of the case can automatically get a message saying, well, what's going on? We take this very serious. Here's an email or a phone call to reach out to. And so leveraging that to be able to make those data-driven decisions is key. Really having that barometer on a client, I think, is just as important, even if you decide not to send any automated messages, but have a good idea on how clients are feeling and have that first line of defense before it goes anywhere public. The same for referral opportunities. Clients have a Your Team tab where they can see who's working on the case at all times, and that's automatically updating as the staff get updated in MerusCase, where they can have the picture, the phone, email, and bio, and for the main attorney have this refer button so that they can share that information to friends and family members, right? Fortifying the word of mouth, but then using that Net Promoter Score data to say every client that leaves me this certain range of scoring can automatically get a message for more referral opportunities for me. So using that data, again, which I think is very important, giving law firms, empowering law firms with this data to make those data-driven decisions and measure staff performance, I think is just as important as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, if you follow what makes Case Status stand alone as the #1 client engagement solution, client engagement is not communication only. It's way more than that. And there are other industries that have this. And you just think about hospitality. I mean, think about how Disney measures you at every step along the journey and is constantly asking for feedback, good, bad, or ugly, to empower a much better experience constantly. And that's exactly what we're trying to bring to bear for a law firm, and to bring that feedback loop. So it can be a little scary for firms out there that aren't ready, necessarily do it. But the cool thing is, what Jose's showing you isn't a configure it and fly by the seat of your pants. We sit down, we help you map out these ideal journeys. That which you have in MerusCase, bring it over into the front office best experience. And you can have specificity to those experiences if you have different types of cases. And then you build the automations that run on that ideal journey. Sure, you may dust them off every period, maybe twice a year, maybe once a year, just to stay up with changes. But the idea is it's running in the background, not only the measurement, but those playbooks. And that's what I say. You get a low score, there's a playbook there too. Don't run away from a low score, run into it, turn it into a high score. And as a marketer, I'll tell you, you get a 9 that used to be a 6, that is stronger than a 9 that started out as a 9. That's not to say go out there and, not hit expectations only to try to raise it later. Bad strategy. But when you get those low scores, turn them around. Those people are going to be super strong for your brand in the long run. And then when they are, that's where referrals, reviews, you drive. And you'll hear that in Sergio's commentary about being able to take a brand new firm at 2 clients and grow it to 60 and now acquire other firms through that process. It's not everybody's philosophy to go out there and do that. But if you lie awake, asleep at night, wondering where those next batch of client intake is going to come from, reviews and referrals is where the hiring decision is made. So really exciting stuff. Jose, I certainly appreciate it. Any other questions? Q seems to be pretty clear. If we're good, I'll move to talking a little bit about not the academic, but the practitioner.
Perfect.
All right. So I've got about 10 minutes.